What's going on, everyone? Austin John Plays here, and today we're going to be talking about the Secret Experience System and how it's implemented in Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. As opposed to most RPG games where you're going to be gaining experience on one or multiple characters, and that's going to be displayed to you in their level, Tears of the Kingdom has a very dynamic system that's actually hidden to you, the player. And through efforts of data mining and testing, we have information on exactly how you're going to be gaining experience and how that's going to be affecting your overall gameplay. And it has changed a fair amount from Breath of the Wild. And there's a good amount of enemies that if you were to defeat them, you actually don't gain any experience. Like pretty much all animals like deer and bears, and all simple enemies like red bokoblins, green Lizalfos, Choo-Choos, Keese, and stall versions of enemies as well. In fact, the first enemy that you gain any experience from whatsoever is going to be a Wizrobe, and you only get 5. Now it's not exactly 5, but through a conversion method that's going to make the rest of this video and documentation much clearer, we're just going to say it's 5. Now, only the first 10 electric Wizrobes that you defeat are you going to be getting experience for. That means that after you defeat 10 of them, you gained 50 experience in total, and now that completes the amount of experience you're going to be getting from just defeating electric Wizrobes. You're also going to get 50 from 10 fire Wizrobes, 50 from 10 ice Wizrobes. Now, what's new is this game also has something called a skill system. Having a flag called is enable boss player skill rate, or as I'm just going to call it, skill. That means that if you were to take down electric Wizrobes in skillful matters like parrying attacks, using flurry rushes, hitting weak spots, and defeating the enemy without taking damage, you're going to be getting bonus experience. So you're going to be able to get a total of 50 experience, and you're going to be able to get a total of 50 experience from doing skill attacks, from doing various skills while defeating Wizrobes. That's a very simple breakdown of exactly how you're going to be getting that, and I'm going to be spending a little bit more time now talking about this specific math on how you're going to be getting that experience if you are interested. If you're not interested in that, just jump on to the next chapter where I go over the rest of these numbers here. There's going to be 4 different types of skills that you can do during combat in order to gain more experience, including a perfect guard, which means you shield parry at the proper moment, hitting an enemy's weak spot, making a perfect dodge, which means jumping vertically or horizontally to avoid an attack and initiate a flurry rush, and killing the enemy without taking damage. Making a perfect guard gives you an additional 100% XP, as well as perfect dodges, 100%. Hitting the enemy's weak spot is additional 50%, as well as a clean takedown, taking no damage. Boss bokoblins, when defeated, reward the player 15 experience points. When you're in your combat against your first boss bokoblin, if you were to jump out of the way and make a perfect dodge one time, that game is then going to be awarding you 15 bonus experience. And then you defeat the enemy. So defeating it gets you 15 experience points, and doing that one skill during battle gets you 15 experience points as well. If during that same first battle with a boss bokoblin, you were to do perfect guard, a weak point, and take it down without taking any damage, the game will not award you 45 points. Instead, it will only cap that to 15 points. So it doesn't matter if you do more skills than you actually can, it's not going to be counted whatsoever. It's only going to be counting that one. Now you found a second boss red bokoblin, and you're going to be taking him down. During your second battle, if you were to go ahead and get yourself a perfect guard, now you're going to be having a total of 30 total skill experience and 30 total mob takedown experience. By the way, the skill experience is rewarded to the player the same time that the KO experience is awarded to the player after the enemy is defeated. And let's say, for example, you aren't good at perfect dodges, but you can take out an arrow, you can take out a Keese eyeball, and you can loose that right at his face. While taking down your first 10, you only did 10 headshots. So the game has awarded you a total of 75 experience during your total 10 boss bokoblins. Any after your first 10, you're not going to be getting experience for defeating them, but you will be getting skill experience for defeating them in tactful ways. So say, for example, for your next 4 boss bokoblins, all the red ones, you did headshots on them. you're now going to be at a total of 150 bonus experience in addition to the 150 experience that you got. You cannot go higher than that number, which means that after you got 150 experience from defeating all of the enemies, and after you got 150 bonus experience for skills during taking down those enemies, you are now capped at 300 experience, which is exactly 20 times of the base. In my opinion, this is a fantastic system that's put into place that rewards players who are able to do skillful takedowns. 15 experience points also covers the Blizzrobe, Wizrobe, and Blitzrobe, and Soldier Construct level 3. Soldier Construct level 1 and 2, you get no experience for defeating those. Boss Bokoblins and Flux Constructs. That does mean that you cannot leave the Great Sky Island with any experience more than 15 for defeating the first level Flux Construct. Then we start to see your numbers getting a little bit higher. As far as Black Moblins, Black Horriblins, all of your Elemental Lizalfos, Battle Taluses are going to be 20 experience each. Captain Construct 3 is 20 experiences. Now we get to the mid-level mini-bosses. As far as the Stalnix and Blue Helix at 25 each, the Luminous Stone Talus at 25, Silver Bokoblins at 25, Soldier Construct 4, Blue Boss Bokoblins, Flux Construct level 2. Then we get to the harder ones, which include the rare Stone Taluses, the Froxes, Phantom Ganon. Moving up even more, we have our Elemental Taluses at 35 each, Black Helixes, Silver Moblins, Silver Horriblins, Black Boss Bokoblins, and Flux Construct 3s. Then we get to the high tier of enemies, including Silver Lizalfos, Captain Construct level 4, Gloom Spawn, aka Gloom Hands. All of those are going to be worth 40 each. And I do believe that Gloom Spawn is going to refer to all 5 hands as a collective. Then we start getting to the Lynels. A base level Lynel is 50 experience points rewarded to you. Silver Boss Bokoblin is 50, Obsidian Frox is 50, Moldulgas is 50, Blue Maned Lynels are 60, and then we start to get to the mini bosses and bosses of the game, which are going to be related to the story. I'm not going to be talking about the story, just mentioning the name of the specific enemy. So if you consider that a spoiler, you may want to jump to the next chapter now. The Moragia, which is going to be the one in Goron City at the top of Death Mountain, defeating him is worth 100 experience points. Sludge-like is worth 100 experience points. And now we come to Colgera, Marbled Goma, Muktarok, and Queen Gibdo worth 100 experience each. However, these are not the temple bosses. By looking at the game's internal flag, these are the underground versions of the bosses. So while you're in the depths doing the rematches, defeating 2 of those is going to be rewarding you 100 experience each. After defeating your second one, if you defeat a third one, you're not getting experience, despite the fact that there are 3 separate rematches for each of these 4 temple bosses. You're also going to notice here that there is a false flag here, meaning that if you defeat them without taking damage or other special parameters, you're not going to be getting bonus experience on top of that. From the temple boss rematches, we have the Silver Lynel at 120, Flame, Frost, and Thunder Gleox at 150, King Gleok at 180, and now we come to the temple instances of these bosses. Colgera, Marbled Goma, Muktarok, Queen Gibdo, and Seized Construct are all going to be their corresponding temple bosses. Weird enough in here, there's going to be a flag of 2. Now, you can only fight these bosses once. You get 300 experience each time that you do, but you're not able to defeat the temple bosses more than once. Couple theories behind this. One, this could be leftover code from when they did the underground ones, or this could be leftover code from how the blights were programmed, because you could take down the blights in Breath of the Wild more than once because of the Champions Ballad, or future proofing? Maybe. Just to let you know, this is a re-upload of this video. Less than 30 minutes after it went out, we already discovered new information, and a bunch of people were saying, oh, maybe the 2 has to do with the 2 instances of this boss, meaning that if you did 0 temples and then went to go fight Ganon, you would then fight these bosses, and then you could reload from that save with the asterisk and then go about the game. That's not the case, because that is not this boss. This is specifically the dungeon boss. This is the the one that's only located in the temple, the one that's located right before Ganon is a different flag, a different code altogether. So this still remains true of only one of these two instances is used. And you're also going to notice that these flags are set to true. So where this gets interesting and also a little weird is when it comes to the bosses. For example, Kogera, your one instance in the Wind Temple that you battled it. You are not able to get any headshots or critical hits because you can only fall through its crystals, and the crystal is not a headshot. You can't do a perfect guard, you can't do a perfect dodge, but you can defeat the enemy without taking damage. However, when it comes to bosses, there's a boss multiplier of 0.1. If you do it clean, you don't get 50% of its XP as a bonus, you get 5%. So because of that, your total KO, you get 300 XP, and your bonus XP, you get 15. Master Koga battles are not considered bosses. In fact, you don't get any experience for defeating Master Koga, so doesn't matter what you do during those. When it comes to Ganondorf, you're going to have phase 1, and then you're going to be having phase 2. Phase 2 is going to feel really long, and all of that is still phase 2 if you know you know. He is applicable to have all of the specific things done as far as perfect guards, headshots with a bow, perfect dodges, and to do it damageless. And just like the 5 temple bosses, he does have the boss multiplier, meaning that you're going to be having to do everything 10 times more. He's worth 800 experience. So in theory, if you wanted to bum rush your experience and just have everything be at the max capital level possible, you can put down a save right there before facing the big man himself. There's actually been new information found regarding this exact thing. When it comes to a boss, there's something in place that's going to prevent you from doing the same thing too many times. That's going to prevent you from getting too much experience via spamming one method. So if you wanted to get the maximum amount of experience that you possibly could, you would go face Ganondorf, and then throughout 10 times of battling him, during the second phase of that battle, you would do one perfect guard, hit the weak spot 2 times, do one perfect dodge, and do it all damageless. After those 10 times are done, you would then have to do it 10 more times for your additional kill the enemy without taking damage, for a total of 11,200. But if you don't want to do those additional 10 battles, then you'd be looking at a number of 10,800 experience throughout 10 different battles. Which if you did that from having absolutely 0 experience, you would be able to scale up all of the weapons in the game until, what are we at, 10,800? That would be enough for the Royal Guard's bow to have your first upgrade. And then the only things left ahead of that are the Royal Guard's bow having a second upgrade, Hylian Shield having 1 and 2 upgrades, and the Royal Guard Shield getting its 1 and 2 upgrades. That'd be the only thing left over if you wanted to just spam Ganon like that. Don't know why you would. I mean, it's a lot of experience, and you could probably do this all under an hour. And let's say, for example, you don't do a damage list, then you're looking at 10,400. That's still a lot. Now that we've gone over all the different ways that the player is going to be accumulating experience, let's take a moment to talk about what happens when you do. As you play through the game, you're going to be coming across a wide variety of enemies. Some of these enemies are allowed to scale, and some are not allowed to scale. The ones that are not allowed to scale will always remain that base enemy, that red bokoblin, forever and ever. But ones that are allowed to scale, like this silver bokoblin over here, he started off as a red, and because I gained experience in the background, at some point he became a silver one. He's on his way to Bokoblin College. College? Sure. And once the player accumulates a total of 500 experience, that begins. You're going to be seeing soldier constructs go to level 2. At 800 experience, you're going to be seeing bokoblins go to blue bokoblins, which you're going to see it listed here twice. That's because one is going to be for the instance of bokoblin, and one is going to be for the instance of an armored version of a bokoblin. Then we're going to be seeing blue harblins at 9, captain construct 2s, blue moblins, and then once we hit 1700 experience, this is a special number. It's a special number because if you were to take down all 5 temple dungeon bosses, and that also includes the 2 mini bosses, you would then be at exactly 1,700 experience points with defeating nothing else in the game. That means that these enemies are guaranteed to happen once you're at the point that you defeated all of the temples. That goes for the blue bokoblin, blue Lizalfo, soldier construct 3, and armored version version of the blue bokoblin turning into a black one. Now, if you were to also beat the game, that gives you 2,500 experience points, just 100 shy of the next large threshold, which is going to be 26, which introduces the black Horriblin, Captain Construct 3, and then it goes up and up from there, including the blue boss bokoblin showing up for the first time, black Moblin, black Lizalfo, silver bokoblin, our first time seeing soldier Construct 4s, and then once we hit 3,800, we're going to be seeing our first appearance of a Lionel here as well. You're also going to see that there's 2 entries of it. That's because that refers to a Lionel and a Lionel who is armored, which is called a Lionel boss. And now if you look over here at 4,200, you're going to be seeing soldier Construct 4 evolving into question mark. I know exactly what you're thinking, and I'm gonna put a big TO because I thought it too. I've been talking to Echo Lot, who by the way did this data mine, shout out to her, and I was like, oh, great, this confirms Master Mode. It doesn't, because that's not how enemies in Master Mode were ever calculated. If you're unfamiliar, Master Mode referred to a DLC in Breath of the Wild that was basically a more difficult version of the game, and all the enemies were harder. When you started the game off, instead of base level bokoblins, they were blue bokoblins, and they scaled up and up from there, including a new class of enemy called gold enemies. And gold enemies came above silver enemies, obviously. Those enemies in Master Mode, nothing changed to them whatsoever as far as how their experience and their scaling was calculated. Some of them were turned on for scaling, some were turned off, but all those bokoblins were blue, meaning that some were going to remain blue forever or some were going to scale up. That's because the game does the final calculations of how much experience you've accumulated and what should be scaled up, and then after all those numbers are ran, it just ups the number by 1. So if we do see Master Mode coming to Tears of the Kingdom, what was supposed to be a Captain Construct 2 would then scale up to a Captain Construct 3. After all that math was done, it would just boost it up to a 4. However, a Soldier Construct 4 will never scale up to something else, at least in this current version of the software. But the code and the math was just there, and it was calculated, and this enemy does have this potential scaling on, but because there's nothing it can become, it will never scale up. And coming near the bottom of the list, we're going to be seeing silver Horriblins, Captain Construct 4s, silver Moblins, silver bokoblins turning into question mark, which again, there's nothing there, and an armored version of it, silver Lizalfos, boss bokoblins, the white maned Lionels, and then we have a whole bunch of enemies that can't scale into anything else as far as Captain 4, silver Horriblins, silver Moblins, silver Lizalfos, silver boss bokoblins, white main Lionels turn into silver Lionels, and then silver Lionels can't turn into anything else. And now that we've covered how you're getting experience and how that's going to be scaling up enemies, that's also going to be scaling up the weapons that you find in the world. However, it works differently from Breath of the Wild, because Breath of the Wild just had weapons, and now you're going to be having weapons and fused weapons. So you're going to be affecting what's called the horns, which is anything that's fused to a weapon that you're going to be finding either in a chest or in the overworld, and that's going to be affecting the weapons that you're going to be finding everywhere else, including the pristine weapons in the depths, including the regular weapons in chests, overworld spawns, everything. First, horn scaling, which is very quick, very straightforward. At certain experience levels, horns that you're going to be finding in the world are going to be better horns, meaning that if you were to come across at an enemy encampment something that has a Horriblin horn on it, at a certain point after 1,333 and a third experience, that horn would then be a blue Horriblin horn. Contrary to how the enemy scaling was, if they introduce a Master Mode that does have a higher tier of horn on a higher tier of enemy, this would then be filled in with that exact information. Meaning that once you hit that same number that changes the boss bokoblin horn, a Soldier Construct 4 horn weapon that you found in the world would then have a Soldier Construct 5 horn weapon out in the world. But that's only if they decide to update this and implement a new difficulty and a new tier of enemy. The horns, very simple, very easy to understand. Now we get to weapon scaling. When it comes to weapon scaling, Certain amounts of experience that you are going to be hitting are going to be changing weapons, either into different weapons or to different tiers of modifiers. All the different tiers of modifiers have been noted here with this small up arrow. And once you reach something that has a tier 2 of weapon, you're going to be having 2 up arrows. And I'm not going to go over this in detail because the amount of things that are listed here, there is a total of 484 entries of when weapons, bows, and shields are going to be scaling up in this game, which is so huge. And also after 2 arrows, there is a blank integer for where there's going to be a 3rd arrow, but obviously that doesn't exist yet. Maybe in a master mode, who knows. You're also going to see in here that there's 2 instances of Hylian Shield. This refers to the one that you're going to be finding underneath Hyrule Castle and one that you're going to be able to buy from CC. Those are the 2 different Hylian Shield entries, although that doesn't matter because their numbers are always identical. What's really weird though is Royal Guard Shield to go from base level to level 1 is after the Hylian Shield's theoretical level 2 to level 3. This game considers the Royal Guard Shield more powerful and requiring more experience than the Hylian Shield. But once you find a Royal Guard Shield with a gold modifier, you know for a fact you have hit the maximum amount of experience in the game. That at 14,000 experience is going to be all the experience that you could possibly need for enemy horns to scale up, and even the highest level of theoretical scaling of a silver Lionel to go into a theoretical gold armored Lionel. If you find a Royal Guard's Claymore with any modifier, you've hit the maximum amount of experience regarding enemies and everything else in the game. So once you hit that level, and that's not a pristine, that's a decayed version. Once you hit that level, you've capped out your experience that's going to be relevant to everything other than just end game weapons. But for simplification, I decided to strip away all of the things that have modifiers and just go to simple upgrades of weapons. Within the last 24 hours, some more work was done that figured out how the skills work, hence me a Nintendo 64 shirt as opposed to previous Austin. And some of these values are ever so slightly different that I'm actually going to be talking about in the video, usually by like 1 or 30 points, not too different. If you're interested in the original document, there's going to be a link down below if you want to go check it out yourself. Guys, I hope this video going over all of the math and the specifics on the experience system for Tears of the Kingdom was enlightening to you. If it was, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button down below. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, turn on notifications. Until next time, Austin John out.